I was introduced to Brian Clemmer at a pastor's conference in Santa Maria area. It was a conference that I'm kind of required to go to and kind of go in sometimes with a cynical attitude about the speakers and about whether or not they're going to be able to speak into my life, or saying that I've kind of been there. I'm older now. I've been around. I've heard it all, at least in my thinking. And I was just really captured by the fresh way that Brian Clemmer was bringing the truth at that conference, and I found myself being drawn in to him. And I turned to my executive pastor at that moment and I said, we've got to meet with this guy. We've got to find out what he's all about. And we ended up attending a conference, a quickening for pastors only of our denomination at Los Angeles International Airport. And I found myself, everybody was entering in and there was a lot of role playing going on, and I don't like playing games. I don't like role playing kind of thing. And I sort of felt I was above all of that. And I found myself trying to do everything I could to keep from getting drawn in to playing the games. And I was even edging my way over to the group that had already participated so I could just sort of blend in with them and get lost in the crowd. And I was sitting there at my seat and with the feeling that I was missing something really important in this whole thing. And it was as though God spoke to my heart in that moment and said, do you have an objection with who I choose to speak to you through? Do you have a problem with my son, Brian Clemmer? And does that trouble you that he's using different ways to speak to you than what you're accustomed to? And I found myself having to agree with that I was limiting how God could speak into my life. And it was in that moment I found myself tears running down my eyes, because I realized that God wanted to speak to me through Brian Clemmer, and I was not allowing him, at least not to the degree that I needed to have him speak to me. And I began to just mildly sob, sitting there in my chair. And it was in that moment that I realized I needed to have Brian Clemmer come to a staff training for us. And we invited him to come to the Highlands, and we got our staff together, and the staff was going through, some of them, the same stuff I went through, and I could see it. And we played the red-black game together and had an awakening. We really had an awakening in that moment. Our staff realizing that in many ways we weren't working with each other to accomplish a common goal, and that we were all trying to win for our own little separate agenda or cause. Or we had Brian come speak at our church. In fact, we were the last church that Brian spoke at before he went home to be with the Lord. Our church embraced Brian Clemmer that morning in such an incredible way. People went out through the atrium, and you could just hear the chatter, the excitement. People were thrilled. People were coming and saying, Pastor Ken, you've got to have Brian Clemmer back to the church. That was so meaningful. I got so much. He spoke right into my life. And we scheduled a quickening event and invited our church to participate in that. And we had an incredible response. And people came out to the event and were tremendously touched. People are still talking in our church about how that turned their lives around, turned their business around. When are you going to have another one? When are you going to have Brian Clemmer come back again? And so we're really excited about doing that, really excited about having a future. And I would just encourage any pastors who would be listening to this. You might have been like me, closed up a little bit to how God can speak into your life. And I just encourage you to just open your heart up. And Brian's not here anymore, but what he left behind and the company that he began is still carrying that message that Brian brought to us. And I would just encourage you to open your heart to Clemmer and Associates and let them come in, do a staff training for you, do a quickening event in your community. I'm looking forward to trying to get our city councils together. We've got two city councils that border each other, and they kind of hate each other, and there's all this conflict going on. I have a goal to get our city councils together and let them experience a quickening and to play the red-black game together and begin to get on the same page in our community, I think it'll have a tremendous impact on our community.